Am I the asshole for getting my stepsister and her family banned from Christmas? I have a daughter, Elena, 6, and my stepsister Jess has a daughter Hattie, 5. Me, my husband, Jess, and her husband Paul are all staying at our parents' house over the Xmas period. For context, Paul arrived a day after the rest of us, very late at night because he does shift work and worked late before driving to our parents'. The next morning, the girls were playing in Elena's room at about 10 a.m. The adults were all downstairs, except Paul because he was sleeping, and my stepdad was out. Suddenly, we heard Paul shouting. This is not too unusual, if unpleasant, but this episode sounded particularly bad, so we got up. Before we can even get to the stairs, my daughter runs down crying, saying Paul had shouted at her for waking him up. My husband was livid and went upstairs to deal with Paul while I calmed my daughter down. I knew it would be absolutely impossible for us to be around Paul after what happened, so we would probably be leaving. Jess said that was ridiculous. Paul probably got annoyed and was tired and he'd apologize and everything would be fine. I said no, it would not be fine. Nobody shouts at my child and remains on speaking terms with me or around my daughter. Paul should know better than to be acting like that with other people's children. When my stepdad came back, we told him what happened and that we would be leaving because we refused to subject Elena to being around Paul after what he did, and we don't trust him not to overstep his boundaries like that again. My stepdad agreed, but said that it was unfair we should have to leave after Paul was the problem. He called Paul and Jess down and said they had to go, weren't welcome on Christmas, or until after we had gone home. Paul tried to defend himself, saying the kids should have been quieter, but when my husband got annoyed, Paul half-heartedly apologized. I didn't believe a word of his apology. My stepdad reiterated that Jess was welcome to stay without Paul, but Paul had to be gone within the hour. Jess started crying and said it was unfair and that my stepdad was choosing me over her and was a horrible father. She started an expletive rant, so I left the room with Elena, and the next I saw was her and Paul going upstairs to pack. They left without a goodbye. Since they've been gone every few hours, I've got a text from Jess saying how I've ruined her Christmas and her relationship with her dad over 30 seconds of bad judgment. I don't think I created this situation because it was my stepdad's decision to throw them out. I offered to leave. I also think Paul made this bed that Jess is lying in. All he had to do was come downstairs and ask us to quiet the children, or pop his head into the room and ask politely. Nevertheless, I do feel bad that Jess is stuck in the middle and that Hattie won't see her grandparents on Christmas because of this. Did I overreact? Would Paul apologizing have been enough? Edit. Re the kids being unsupervised, I was upstairs with them, and we were all going down to do some baking. The girls asked for 10 more minutes to continue playing before coming down, so I went down to get all the stuff ready in the kitchen. They weren't on their own for hours on end. They were playing with a large dollhouse in Elena's room, hence why they were not playing downstairs to start with. Edit 2. I don't think this will change the responses, but someone said this needed to be in the main post. Re Paul's history of yelling. Paul yells at his daughter Hattie quite a lot, in a way I would describe as quite vicious. We have all been made uncomfortable by Paul's outbursts, and more than once I've had to bite my tongue because I just think his conduct is unacceptable, but I do because he and Jess are the parents. Maybe I did overreact, but imagining him shouting at my daughter the way I've seen him shout at has made me sick and angry. Paul is an asshole for shouting rather than using his words like an adult. You're an asshole for immediately going nuclear and dramatically announcing you're leaving without so much as a discussion. Your stepdad is an asshole for not even trying to mediate and jumping straight to kicking your stepsister's family out. You all need to learn to communicate more effectively. Edit. Whoever reported my comment to that Reddit cares nonsense for suicide prevention. You're a true comedic genius. I'm going not the asshole, honestly. I mean, children can be loud, but you can't scream at kids that aren't even yours and expect no consequences. And judging from your post, this is not too unusual, if unpleasant. I'm assuming Paul screams a lot. So it's more about him and his lack of boundaries than about the kids being loud, in my opinion. I've dealt with people just like this in my own life. Am I the asshole for not taking my baby mama's son on a trip to Disneyland? 8 years ago I got a chick I was sleeping with pregnant a few months prior to us graduating college. We had a son, and due to circumstances I don't want to get in the weeds on, my baby mother has custody of him. I still see him very often, a few times a week, and I pay child support. I don't particularly have a good relationship with my son's mother. She resents me for what happens, and honestly I'd rather have that hostility towards me than towards our son, so that's fine by me. After having my kid, she ended up having another month's baby, so she currently has my 8-year-old son, and I think a 6, give or take a year-old girl. I don't really pay the girl any mind as she's not my kid. Admittedly, I am pretty sure her father is not really that involved. Recently it was my current long-term girlfriend's birthday and she said that she wanted to take a day trip to Disney for it. I thought it would be a great opportunity to take my son as he's never been, and it's Disney and kids love that shit. I told his mother and she seemed displeased. She asked about her daughter and if I would take her. My thought was of course not. Like, why would I do that? I told her I hadn't planned on it. She said it wouldn't be right for me to take him and not take her, as she would get jealous that he got to go to Disneyland and she didn't. I told her that she's not my daughter and I don't really have an obligation to her. I also mentioned that Disney was not cheap and I wouldn't be spending money on her kid for it. She then offered to pay for half her kid's trip. I of course rejected this too, as if I'm not the kid's daddy, I'm not gonna pay, after all she has a dad and he should be taking care of her. Also, that wouldn't solve the issue of me having to babysit while on a trip with my son and GF. So I said no to this. She told me then that she wouldn't be letting her son go simply because it's not fair. So here's where I may be the asshole. I kinda played my son against her. I told him that I wanted to take him to Disney but his mom said no. This of course led to him being very upset and caused his mom to relent. We went to Disney, had a great time, and she was incredibly bitter when I brought him back. Am I the asshole? Not the asshole for not taking the girl on the trip. She's not yours and you don't owe her or her mother anything. But damn the adults in this story, you all sound exhausting and the kids are getting caught in the crossfire rather than being prioritized. Don't play your kid against his mom, no matter how difficult she's being. Work on better co-parenting, you've got at least another decade to go. You weren't the asshole until you got the kid in the middle of this BS. You're no better than your ex, even if you think you are. Everyone sucks here. I'm with you on that. She's not your kid, she's not your problem, and well within your rights to not want to take her along. You became the asshole when you played your son against his mom. The mom is an asshole because life isn't fair and she is trying to deny your kid bonding time because it wouldn't be fair to her daughter. She could have done a girl's day or something. Sounds like your son will be missing out on so many thinfas because it wouldn't be fair to her daughter.
Am I the asshole for requesting that my wife cleans up after herself?
I, 28 male, married my wife, 23 female, who we'll call Donnie, about a year ago, and we were very lucky to get pregnant soon after. Donnie is in her 3rd trimester now and on pregnancy leave. Once we got the good news, I started working extra hours in order to save more money for when the baby gets here. This means that I have to get up extra early every morning to get to work. I try to be out the door by 6 a.m. I get home a little later and I'm usually pretty beat, but I still contribute to the house by doing dishes, cleaning up after the cat, 'cause she can't, that kind of stuff. This new routine has been hard on both of us, but we've made it work and so far everything has been fine. That is, until the other day, when I wake up to Donnie crying. We only have one bathroom, which is downstairs, and lately Donnie has been having a little more trouble going up and down the stairs. This usually went fine, but this time she didn't make it. So, when I came downstairs, I found her, in tears, standing in her own mess. She was clearly very embarrassed and even more so that I caught her. I immediately felt bad for her, and tried to comfort her and told her it's all good, it can happen to anyone, just clean it up and we'll go back to bed. She asked me if I could help her, but I told her that made me uncomfortable. I would never expect anyone to clean up after my mess. TBH, it has happened before when I had a couple too many beers. But I always clean up after myself and it would feel weird to ask Donnie to do it for me in that situation. She got really mad and called me insensitive for making her clean up after herself after an already embarrassing enough situation. I proposed a compromise: she would clean up the mess, and I would get her clean PJs, since I'd just done laundry anyway. She asked me if this is what it was going to be like if the baby made a mess, and I told her I would be perfectly okay to clean up after the baby, since it can't clean up after itself. I then told her I didn't have time to stand there arguing with her all night when I had to get up in like 3 hours to go to work and provide for us. So, I walked upstairs, grabbed her PJs for her and went back to bed. The next morning when I got downstairs, I found her on the couch. She told me that she barely slept and felt horrible about the night before. She called me an asshole and said that by not helping her, I only embarrassed her more. She then told me she would be staying with her mom until I got my shit together. It's been half a day now, and she's not responding to my texts. I talked about it with a few coworkers and I'm getting mixed responses, but I just want to make sure. Am I the asshole? Edit 1. So after about 5 hours, most of y'all seem to agree that AITA. Danny's coming home tonight to pick up some stuff, so I hope we'll have a moment to talk it out then. I'll take you guys' verdict into account going into the conversation. I did see some people who would see my side of the story, so I do hope she'll take that into account too. We'll update soon. Edit 2. Keeping it brief because of word limit, we'll post full update after judgment. Long story short. Donnie and her mom came to pick up her things last night. Donnie and I talked, she told me her side, I told her my side. In the end, we both ended up apologizing and agreed we were gonna work on it. She's gonna be staying with her mom until we find a comfortable way for Donnie to sleep downstairs at my place. Honestly dude, you are the asshole here. Man up and help out the woman who is actively carrying your child. You pissing yourself when you're drunk is not even remotely related to your pregnant wife struggling to move fast enough to get to where she needs to go. If it happens again, help her out. For now, I'd just apologize and acknowledge her feelings. Hold up. You told your coworkers about your wife soiling herself? OMFG. And the fact that a woman in her third trimester would have a really terrible time kneeling and getting back up off of the floor? OMFFFG. You are the asshole. You are the asshole. She is in her third trimester. You should have helped. You also need to figure something out so she doesn't have to go up and down stairs in the middle of the night, but she may have figured that out for herself by moving to her mother's. Am I the asshole for letting my girlfriend sleep and miss her appointment? Throwaway for obvious reasons. My girlfriend, 35F, is a heavy sleeper, doesn't wake up for alarms or on time, and I'm, 32F, a super light sleeper and have insomnia. Because she works earlier than I do, we have an arrangement where I wake her up and drive her to work in the morning. Per her request, I also make sure she wakes up for morning appointments, etc. I try to wake her up pretty slowly and gently, and rub her arms and talk to her to keep her awake until she gets up. If I don't, she'll fall right back asleep. Thing is, she's often grumpy and pissed in the mornings. I try to take it in stride because she's not a morning person. But sometimes the stuff she says while waking up can get hurtful and mean. We always discuss it and she always apologizes later and clearly feels bad, but still. This morning, she asked me to wake her up at 9 a.m. for a 10 a.m. appointment. I started doing my usual wake-up routine, and she glared at me and went, "Oh, you're doing the thing where you annoy me into staying awake." I replied, "Yes honey, I don't want you to fall back asleep and miss your appointment." She snapped, "Well, it doesn't matter what I say, does it? Because you're not going to listen to me and you're just going to assume I'm going to fall back asleep, so you're going to keep annoying me to keep me awake anyway." I got mad and snapped back, "Well, I assume that because it's what happens all the time. But fine, if you don't want me to then I'll leave you alone." I went to the living room and sure enough, she fell back asleep and missed her appointment. I just let her miss it. She got pretty upset at me for not waking her up again and letting her miss her appointment, and I replied that I did try to wake her up, but she snapped at me again and I was tired of being treated like shit in the mornings, so I'm going to let her sleep from now on. We're still at odds about it. I think I might be the asshole for letting her miss her appointment and threatening to stop waking her up when I know that'll probably cost her her job. But I'm tired of being snapped at in the mornings, too. So my friends, am I the asshole? Not the asshole, but how did she get to age 35 without resolving this issue for herself? Doubt she's always had someone willing to rub her arms and act like a human alarm clock all her life. Yay, not the asshole. She verbally abuses you every day because she's too much a princess to use an alarm? No. Not the asshole. If you had not tried to wake her up at all, then you'd be the aw. But you did wake her up, she insisted she'd stay awake, doing it very rudely, so you walked away. She's putting you in a no-win situation. Either you keep waking her up and submit to her BS, or you don't wake her up and have to put up with her BS. Your girlfriend is a grown woman acting like a toxic bully. You need to stop trying to wake her up at all. You also need to ask yourself why you needed to come onto Reddit to understand that what your girlfriend is doing to you is not okay, and you shouldn't be putting up with her obnoxious behavior.